My name is Ashima Kotla, and I am the event coordinator of Quest. And I'm really thrilled to welcome all of you to this incredible conversation about a journey outside of academia in the field of science communication. So before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that for those of us who are in Vancouver, we are on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nation. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker for today, Yukiko Stranger-Galey. She is a design and exhibits manager at the Beaty Biodiversity Museum at the University of British Columbia. As an exhibit manager, Yukiko designs exhibits that celebrate wonder and diversity of the natural world. She holds a B.Sc in Biochemistry from the University of Edinburgh and an M.Sc in Microbiology from the University of Chicago. In her current role, Yukiko has curated over 20 temporary exhibitions and is responsible for 500 permanent exhibits, celebrating the museum's 2.1 million biological specimens. She has a long list of accolades, and she's been the recipient of B.C. Museums Association Chicago Maker Award and Innovation Award, as well as Governor General's History Award for Excellence in Museums. So with that, I think I'll let Yukiko take it over, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
So thank you to everyone. Welcome to this brown bag. I'm excited to speak today to you a little bit about my career journey. So hopefully want to provide some support and encouragement to other women in STEM, and also those of you who might be looking for something other than the traditional academic research path. So as Ashima mentioned, I am the exhibits and design manager at the Beaty Biodiversity Museum, which is on the campus of the University of British Columbia. We have over 2.1 million research specimens in the museum, and I manage our over 500 permanent exhibits that communicate stories about these specimens, these scientists, these research that's happening to the public. As well as our permanent exhibitions, I also manage a rotation of temporary exhibitions. And these explore the intersection between art and science and communicate the diversity and beauty of the natural world to the public through a variety of different media. And these can include paintings, sculptures, photography, even poetry and music as well. So I'm going to step back a little bit to tell you about how I got to where I am today. And for so many people, just like so many people, my first steps towards my current career path happened a long time ago back in childhood. And I have several very clear, distinct memories about my entry into this career path that I want to share with you today and explain a little bit about how I got to this place. So growing up, I had a great love of science. And in tandem with this, I also had an equally great love of English literature. Very much into reading. I read everything I could. And one of the books that I remember very clearly reading was a biography of Marie Curie by her daughter, Eve Curie. And Marie Curie is clearly an inspiration to very many people, particularly young women growing up and thinking about going into the field of science. And I remember being very much inspired by her career journey and her pathway into this academic research and scientific research field. So she was very much an early inspiration to me. Another memory that I have is of going to a science museum. So when I was younger, I visited many museums, and one of the museums that I visited as a child as part of a field trip was a science museum in London, which is where I grew up. And I have this very distinct memory of standing down all the way down with my class, all the way down a stairwell, an open stairwell. And some of the science engagement workers that were at the museum blowing these giant bubbles and letting them float all the way down the stairwell amongst us. And at the same time as we were watching these, they were talking and telling us about the science of bubbles, the science of surface tension, of rainbows, all of these wonderful things that connect to this immersive experience that we were having. And then I have one more memory of when I was younger, and this was a school memory. So I do recall a science teacher that we had when I was at school teaching us in our science lessons, and she asked a question and I answered the question, and the answer was surface area. It doesn't seem very much to many people. I mean, we answer a lot of questions during school, and many of them are right and many of them are wrong, as they will be as we test and learn. But what was different about this was that the teacher certainly really highlighted the fact that I had managed to transfer a piece of knowledge from a previous unit that I'd been working on and bring it and connect it to the unit we were currently working on. So the surface area theme had not been introduced in this aspect yet. And she reiterated this throughout our unit as we were progressing. And this was a proud moment for me. I mean, teachers certainly encourage you and praise you when you get something right. But continually marked and really marked as a this is a proud moment. You should be proud of this. Really stuck in my memory and really helped encourage me towards this path of science. So when you look at these sort of three little examples that I've given you here of early childhood memories that drove me towards this path, you'll notice that the inspiration here came from areas that most people find their career inspiration journey starting. We have the home memory with the reading of that biography. We have a very formal education memory, which through the school, and we have an informal education or community-based memory as well. And these are three areas that that certainly led me to the exposure and towards this in academic research and science, which is where I was planning from this point in my childhood. So I brought up this little pathway here because this is certainly a pathway that I aim to follow. I did my school education. I moved on to my undergraduate. I did a degree at the University of Edinburgh, and that was in biological sciences with an honours in biochemistry. I then carried on down that blue track into a degree, into a PhD program, and that was at the University of Chicago in microbiology. And my aim was then to carry on up to postdoc and then eventually go into to look at a faculty research position. And very much down this blue track, I was excited about it and continued all the way up until partway through my PhD. Now my PhD, many people have wonderful experiences with their PhD, and mine was too, but it was just not quite the right thing for me. Partway through my PhD, I was engaged certainly with the research topic that I was studying. It was on vaccine development against bacterial infections. It's a very interesting topic. It was a great lab, well-respected lab. I had published, I had been interviewed by the news about my research. It was a very exciting time. But at the same time, while all these wonderful things on the surface were happening, I was not happy below the surface. I was not finding the engagement and the fulfillment that I required to really cement me into this career. I was finding that my field of view was narrowing and narrowing as I grew more and more specialized into this particular topic. And I was also finding that my communication with the public was lessening. I was just finding myself becoming more isolated into this very academic world. And I was craving a little more communication with the public. So I thought about the other aspects. So if I'm not going to continue on to academia, there's industry, government work, NGOs, all these other options. And I was seeing the same issue happening with each of them. So I decided to take a little detour. So I left my program. I was about halfway through my PhD, maybe 2.5, 3 years in. I left the program with a published paper. I left with a master's in microbiology, but I had no idea where I was going. So I had no job to go to. I had no career plan, but I just knew that this was not the direction I wanted to continue on in. So at that point, I was living in Chicago, and it was a scary time. I mean, to leave something which is very defined for something which has no definition at all is definitely scary. And probably if I thought too much about it, I might not have done it. But I didn't think too much about it. I made the decision and left. And living in Chicago, my visa was tied to my academic program. My partner and I had decided to move to Vancouver at the end of the summer, but that gave me a couple of months of just to sit around and twiddle my thumbs, which was not exactly what I wanted to do. So being unable to work, I looked around for a volunteer position, and I can't stress enough how wonderful volunteer work is. I volunteered at various points during my past and current career path, and I've always found it a really rewarding experience. And this particular volunteer experience really made that switch for me and gave me a direction in which to go. So being in Chicago, I volunteered at the nearby Adler Planetarium. And I found this just an incredibly transformative experience. I had been to many museums growing up, and I loved museums. I still love museums. But I'd never really thought about what happens behind the museum, why someone, when you go to a museum, who makes that happen? And that had never really occurred to me. When you have career days at school, no one ever said, and museums are a potential option. Would you be interested in museums? It was always much more traditional roles. So working behind the scenes in a museum and volunteering there, understanding that there are people that take care of the collections. There are people whose job it is to develop and give the educational programming. And there are people who develop and put together the exhibits. This was all a new field for me, and I was so wonderfully inspired by this. For me, it was that perfect, wonderful way in which to enjoy science, but also communicate with the public. And so when we moved to Vancouver, I applied for and was lucky enough to get a job at Science World. And so I worked there for a number of years. I started as a science facilitator, giving the programs to schools, doing the shows at center stage, looking after the galleries, that kind of thing. And gradually, as time went on, I started working on projects with the exhibits department. And this is where I discovered that my passion really lay. It was so wonderful to be able to do that deep research into these different areas, different topics, and figure out how to communicate that in an effective way to people of many different backgrounds and abilities and opportunities. And so I found this a really exciting area to move into. And that led me, after a number of years, to the current position that I'm in as the exhibits manager at the Beaty Biodiversity Museum. Now, interestingly, I do want to tell you a little bit about how I got my job at the museum, because it also started with volunteering. And I can't stress enough how wonderful an opportunity volunteering can be. So the museum opened in 2010, and I actually started in my current position at the museum about a year later in 2011. But I had started at the museum a number of months before, just shortly after it opened. I had seen this museum opening. I was interested in the museum. It seemed to really talk a lot about scientific research, primary research, and it had that marriage again with public science communication. So I decided to volunteer at the museum. I did my volunteer training. They have a wonderful volunteer program, and I went through my volunteer training program, but I never actually did a shift as a volunteer, because by the time I finished my training program, I had actually applied for and got a job as an interpreter there at the museum. And this again was similar to what I had done at Science World at the beginning. I was giving school programs, giving public tours, those kinds of items. And this was a great way to get to know the people, the community, the organization itself, and also the kinds of stories and the kinds of approaches that the museum was taking. And this was extremely valuable when a few months later, the position of exhibits manager came up, and using both my current experience at the museum and my past experience as the exhibits, working in the exhibits department at Science World, I was able to use those and put forward a case and interview. And I was very lucky in being able to be offered the job here at the museum. So again, I can't stress enough, volunteering is a wonderful way to have a look at an organization, have a look at a different career path, have a look at some different, meet some other people, figure out what they did to get where they are, and see what it is that you might be interested in and where you might like to turn your attention to for your next journey. So this particular job at the museum, I want to talk a little bit about my work at the museum. It's that perfect balance for me of creativity and art married with science. So as I mentioned, growing up, I had this great love of science and this great love of English literature. And I chose to go down the scientific route. I thought I can always feed my love of literature by reading. I don't necessarily need to have a career in it. But I was so lucky to be able to find something that marries both of them. And I think certainly just being able to have that strong scientific mind and talk with the researchers about their work, and then using my creativity and my language skills, being able to almost translate that scientific research, the primary scientific research, into accessible formats for the public, gives me the balance that I was looking for. And it's something that I get excited by every day when I do it. So when I talk about my exhibits, when I develop the exhibits, these are words that I strive to match. I would love my exhibits to be fun and engaging, meaningful, and of course, I want those exhibits to resonate with people and continue on in their life as they carry on. So when I was thinking about these words that I strive for, I wanted to give you a few little examples of some of my exhibits and how I try and put these words into the exhibits. So these are some examples of some exhibits I've done over the years. This is Shatterbug by Ian Lane, and this was a fun exhibition. This is an exhibition of photographs of insects, and as an activity in the museum, we created these costumes for people to wear, these insect costumes, and people loved wearing them. There was wonderful photos of people exploring these costumes and being these insects. And these aren't just a standard butterfly or standard moth or dragonfly costume. We created these in-house to specific organisms. So that butterfly costume on the left, we used the patterning from an actual photograph of a Western swallowtail butterfly. So this is a particular species. The patterning matches that of a real photograph of a real specimen. And this to me made that a really fun, engaging, but also authentic experience. Engaging. So this is an exhibition this is a part of an exhibition from Life as We've Known It by David Ellingson, who had a series of photographs that speak to species loss, species and biodiversity loss. And as part of this exhibition, we created this eagle. It was about the size, life-size eagle silhouette, bald eagle silhouette. And these feathers were put out for people to add their own answers to these questions of how will I protect the planet? So people put in, no pollution, recycling, go vegetarian, all sorts of wonderful things. Some people just put their name, others just colored in, but the important aspect was that people engaged with the exhibition. They engaged with that idea of protecting the planet. They engaged with that personal responsibility piece. And that was a really wonderful piece for us. Meaningful. So this is an exhibition called Whale Dreams by Colleen McLaughlin-Barlow. And I'm just going to play this video walkthrough of her exhibition. She does sculptures and artwork, and these were bones that were done in our collection. And to make this a really meaningful exhibition and a meaningful experience, we put out those same bones that she worked on and encourage people, you can see people's artwork here, encourage visitors to create their own artworks, and they could take them home or leave them up on the wall as part of the exhibition. We had some puzzles here and also we went back to the costumes again because they've been so much enjoyed in the previous exhibitions. So we have a sea star, some red coral, a sea turtle, and a nudibranch as well. Okay. And in terms of authentic experiences, almost every experience you have at the Beaty Biodiversity Museum is authentic because by virtue of the specimens that we have. The specimens that we carry are real specimens. They are real animals' teeth or skin or pelts or feathers. And these are parts of the animal that we treat with respect. We encourage people to interact with them, and they are authentic. And by virtue of them being real and authentic, the experiences and the memories that people create as they interact with them are something that a lot of people tell us they carry with them for months and even years. And of course, sharing an experience is a hugely important part of an exhibition and part of learning. So in this particular exhibition, Backyard Biodiversity, which we did in conjunction with the Children's Writers and Illustrators of Canada, we asked people to write about the ocean. And so people would take this wave-shaped paper and write a piece of inspiration that they wrote, that they wanted about the ocean, whether it was a poem or a drawing or a memory or even just a word that they connected with. They then shared this up on the wall that you can see behind there. And that allowed people to be part of a collective sharings about the ocean and about what this means to them. And that was a really powerful piece of the exhibition. This is Life in Color by Angela Goliath. And this is an example of a really fun example of an accessible exhibition. You can see here in the video, this is a giant, huge size coloring sheet that's been put on the wall. It's extremely accessible. This particular, we had two of them on the wall. One was themed around terrestrial organisms and one themed around ocean life. And the wonderful thing about this is that it was accessible to all ages, all abilities, people that could write or not write, people that if they're unable to read, they can still wanted to just have a conversation with somebody while they colored by side, completely unrelated to the artwork, or people that wanted to color alongside someone and talk about the organism that they were coloring. This was just a really fun exhibition and helped engage a lot of people in biodiversity. Inspiring. So we have this great series at the museum called Researchers Revealed, where we do these short little videos on highlighting these researchers at the Biodiversity Research Center that we're connected to. So the wonderful thing about this series is that we're able to really highlight the diversity, not only of research, but of the researchers themselves. And I think this is really key to inspiring all sorts of other people into this field. If this is something that, if the field of academic research is something that people want to explore, then they certainly want to be able to explore it through the eyes of someone that they can connect with. And so Rosianna Gamlin-Green was one such researcher that we highlighted, extremely inspiring. And Barbara Anita Bradley is another student, a master's student at the time that we highlighted. And she gave a very personal experience in her video. I'm just checking the time to see if we have time to watch a couple of these. They are just a minute and a half long. So I think we're gonna watch just a couple of them. I'm just gonna
Gamlin-Green. I'm a National Geographic explorer and a PhD student at UBC in John Richardson's lab. I'm researching the only Indigenous amphibian on Haida Gwaii, the western toad. Locals are concerned because they don't see it around as much, and I want to figure out why. I'm also doing a genetic project to try and figure out if the toad is genetically distinct from mainland populations. My favourite research memory is the first time that something really tangible happened as a result of the research that I'm doing. So I met some locals on Haida Gwaii who really cared about toads. They had seen lots of adult toads on their property and always gotten off their tractors to help get them out of harm's way. And I asked if I could look on their property to see if there was a breeding site. And I found one, and they were really excited, and they wanted to know, what can we do to help save the toads? And I said, well, if you can delay harvesting around your pond and leave a buffer. And then I was driving past at the end of the summer, and I saw this giant buffer that they'd left around their pond, and I knew that that was saving thousands of baby toads. You may have guessed by now, but my favourite organism is the western toad. It has a fascinating life cycle where hundreds of adult toads come together en masse to come to the exact same spot on a pond at the same time of year and have a giant party. The females lay thousands of eggs, and the males, they make this release call when they're trying to get a mate. They go, and that's why they're my favourite organism.
That was Rosianna's video, and I've got Barbara's video as well, which I'm excited to share with you.
Hi, my name's Barbara Netto-Bradley. I'm a master's student with Dr. Matthew Pinnell and Dr. at the University Research Centre. So leaves come in many shapes and sizes, and often that variation is linked to how quickly they can acquire energy and use it. And we don't know how that variation is spread across vascular plants, so I am setting out to study their evolution. Last year I was fortunate enough to go to Svalbard in the high Arctic, and one evening after a day of measuring photosynthesis, we headed out.
Welcome everybody, if you're joining us. We've got
looking for fossils, and it was spectacular to see how different the landscape
We're going to start
was
at 1 o'clock.
50
in the
million
meantime,
years ago.
Please do use the chat to share where you are and whether you've been to
all
the
of the
museum
ones I
or
haven't
not
studied
before.
yet.
So go ahead and try out the chat because we'll be using that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to go back to my presentation. So those were some awesome videos. Like, I really enjoy the personal connection that they allow us to have with these students here. And I think those are great examples of videos that we've created that really can inspire people that are interested in this career choice, and can also allow people to connect with, on a very deep personal level, with the people that are doing the research. So it's not just a connection with the topic and the subject matter and the career path, but the connection with the people that are actually going down that path. And I think that's really key for a true connection and true engagement. So moving on, these are the words that I use to describe what I strive for in my exhibitions: fun, engaging, meaningful, authentic, shared, accessible, inspiring, and personal. And very much those apply equally to my career choices and my ideal career, which is really what I'm doing right now. So what I think is wonderful is that for me, when I do these experiences, when I create these exhibitions, this work for me is also fun, it's engaging, the work is meaningful, the work is authentic. I feel like it's a shared work environment. The work is accessible, inspiring, and personal to me. And I feel very lucky to have come across a career path that encapsulates all of these for me. These pictures here are of my family. So that's myself with my daughter on the right there. That was my eldest daughter when she was just about 2 years old. And we were visiting the Biodiversity Museum and looking, I believe we were looking at a baby duck specimen at the time. And then my family as it stands now is there in the smaller photograph. That's my eldest daughter again in the middle. She's 7 years old. And my middle daughter is 5 years old, and my youngest is a little boy who is 9 months old today, and I'm currently on parental leave with him. So I feel very lucky that I've been able to have the career journey that I've had and get to a career space that I enjoy so much, and at the same time have this wonderful family life and be able to balance that with the family that I want to. And I think it's very difficult to separate career journeys and personal family journeys because those are so deeply intertwined. You spend so much time with your family and building that up, and at the same time you spend a lot of time at work and building that path as well. And that to have something that is so separated for me would not have worked. So for me, I was very lucky to find something that I can integrate the two very easily, and they do integrate extremely well. And I'm lucky to find an organization that is supportive of that integration and to have a great balance between the two. And I think for me, if I could give any piece of advice on anybody's career journey, just a single piece, it would be to say that if whoever you are, whether you're a woman in science or a science communicator or an artist or something that doesn't fit into any of those categories, when you're looking at your career path, please also make sure that you consider your personal journey as well. The two are very hard to separate, and I found in my own personal experience that only having joy in both of them made the both of them mesh well together. I really needed to have a joyful experience in both for them to be able to work together and provide me with the fulfilling and joyful path ahead. So I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for coming, and thank you to Schwist for inviting me back again. I really appreciate it. It's a wonderful organization, and I am really happy to take any questions that might come up. I'll just stop sharing my screen now.
Perfect. Thank you, Yukiko. It was an amazing talk. And I was wondering, before we lead into Q&A session, maybe if everyone can turn on their videos and Christine can take a picture.
Okay. Of course, this photo will go out on our social media. Watch for it on Twitter, Instagram. We have a new fantastic Instagram account right now, and also on LinkedIn and everywhere. All right, and maybe even the newsletter. Okay, on the count of 3, I'm going to take the shot. So everybody smile. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, all right. Last chance, 30 seconds. Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. That's good. I'll just check in the second page if somebody. Oh, there are more here. Okay. And I see that Noeen is not joining us. Okay. 1, 2, smile. Thank you. Thank you so much, and watch for our photo on social media.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, so Yukiko, so the first question that I wanted to get started on was, do you have any recommendations for resources for someone that is interested in terms, like something that you would suggest?
I'm sorry, you just sort of cut out there. Could you just repeat that?
Sure, I'm sorry. So the question is, are there any recommendations for resources for someone that is interested in a similar career path, like books or articles or something on those lines?
Oh, right. Yes, so absolutely. So I would suggest, if you're interested in museums and something like that, I would absolutely do a couple of different routes. So definitely talk to some people in museums that you're interested in. So have a look at some websites of museums that you could imagine yourself wanting to work at. Find out the people that are doing the things that you want to do, and talk to those people. I'm sure museum people are so happy to talk about what they do. And communication is what they do. So I'm sure they would love to talk with you about that. as well, try some different organizations, like books and articles. I can't think of any offhand, but really it's about the current, what's happening currently. And so I would say some organizations that you should just get on their listserv with and just start seeing what's happening and what's going on in your area would be the BCMA is the British Columbia Museums Association, and they have a very active community, very active listserv. The CMA is the Canadian, the umbrella sort of for the whole of Canada, Canadian Museums Association. But if you're in a different province, they also have different ones like the Alberta Museums Association. They generally have listservs that you can join. They talk about what's happening in their community. If you're in the Lower Mainland, I would also suggest the LMME, which is the Lower Mainland Museum Educators. And you can, again, Google them and find their website, and they have another active listserv. All of these organizations have professional development activities that are happening regularly. So they are doing presentations on careers, presentations on different aspects of museum work, and all sorts of things like this. I think those are some great resources.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Yukiko. So the next question is, could you share some advice for researchers who are trying to communicate their research to the non-academic community?
Oh, that's a really great question, because that's what I was hired to do essentially. But really, if you can do it yourself, that's the most wonderful way to be able to get your research out there. So some ways that I can suggest, and just some simple ways, but I'm happy also, I think that you have my Twitter handle, so you can contact me if you want specifics, and I can happy to talk to you individually too. But some just ways off the top of my head are try and think about how you would explain that particular topic, whatever it is you want to say, in 30 seconds. That's all you get. 30 seconds is all you get. And once you try and squeeze your topic down to like 30 seconds, it makes it very easily fall away all of the extra pieces that perhaps would be great as an extension, or if you were more interested, you could follow in on that topic. But just to get the very bare bones out there, I think is a great way to trim it down. I would also suggest using a lot of things like we use a lot of graphics in our museum to sort of communicate with people who in a very visual manner. Graphics, we're very lucky that we have a designer that can do those, but photographs, video clips are wonderful. If you're using social media as a way to get your message across, video clips are huge. They're just even like 10-second clips of you showing one little something about your research would be a wonderful way. One of a really popular video that we had on our social media from years ago was like a 5-second loop clip of somebody, do you know the little flower? It's called a bleeding heart, and it's like a little heart-shaped flower. Someone just opening one, and that was it. It was like 5 seconds, but just opening the flower. And I think those very simple short videos are a great way to sort of start connecting with the public. So if you have an organism that you work on, let's say you work on bacteria, do like a 5-10 second clip of you streaking a Petri plate, just streaking the plate of the bacterial cells and saying, this is whatever organism it is. That's it. Maybe that's enough to just get people interested and intrigued with what you're doing. And these little short snippets of information are how a lot of people absorb information. Not many people absorb information or get interested by reading, 500 words on something. They might read 5. 5 is a good amount of words. So try and keep it into short little pieces, and try and find something fun and unusual about your organism that's really, people love interesting, unusual facts as well. So little things like that.
Awesome. I think that's really great advice, Yukiko. And as I said, keep it short. So I think that's very, very relevant. So you did mention about volunteering in your, how it played a huge role in your career path. So there's a question, and they are asking, are there any volunteer opportunities at the Beaty Museum, and what are the expectations from the volunteers?
So yes, so there are absolutely volunteer opportunities in almost every museum that I can think of. I can't think of one right now that doesn't have a volunteer, that doesn't rely heavily, in fact, on volunteers. Volunteers are a huge part of the museum community, partly because of a couple of reasons. Partly just practically speaking, museums don't have a lot of money. So they do rely on volunteers for that, absolutely. But more than that, museums are part of a community. Right? They are part of the community that they sit on, whether it's physically in the neighborhood, or whether it's the city, or whether it's a virtual community through their digital exhibitions. And so definitely there are many opportunities for volunteers, and it helps the museum connect to their community and make sure that they have a diverse representation and a diversity of programming and exhibits that they're producing. So volunteers, though, range in the museums from all aspects. In the Beaty Museum, for example, we have volunteers that work with the specific collections themselves, work with the actual organisms. There are volunteers that work with exhibits. There are volunteers that work with education as well, with the programming. I would say that your best bet is just to go to the museum itself. Some places have rolling sort of volunteer intakes, and some places do it sort of once a year or twice a year. So just connect with a specific museum and find out. Volunteering right now, because of the pandemic, is a little bit funny. It's a little bit off, but there's still opportunities to connect with and do volunteer work online and digitally as well. And that's certainly something you can start. And I think that there will be opportunities to do more physical in-person volunteering as we move beyond this current working situation.
Perfect. So I think the next question we have from the audience is, does the museum host events for science-related arts only, or other artists can apply as well to show their works?
So the exhibitions that we have at the Beaty Museum are sort of mission and vision for those is any artworks in any media that explore and connect to the natural world. So this is a very, actually quite a wide spectrum. There's almost nothing that I can think of that doesn't connect to the natural world in some way or shape or form. So I think you'd be hard-pressed to find something that didn't actually connect to the natural world, whether it's through organisms, whether it's through meaning and feeling, whether it's through climate change, whether it's through activism, any of these items, that they are actually pretty connected. So we keep it pretty broad like that. You are always welcome to apply and as an exhibitor, and we can absolutely take a look at your work. You can and see if it connects to the museum. So for that, the museum has on their contact page a little place where you can actually submit, or you can just email the exhibits manager. Usually it would be me. Currently, I have a leave replacement, which is Derek Tan, so he's on the contact page as well. And you're also welcome to contact me, and I will just save your information until I get back in October.
Thank you. Oh, that's an interesting one. So it says, what is the most challenging installation you have created, and why?
Ooh, so they're all challenging in their own particular way, right? Because they all are very different, and we'd like to do something new every time, which is part of the excitement. One of the most challenging, as I'll say it because you saw the video here, is that video of Whale Dreams by Colleen McLaughlin-Barlow. She had real life-size whale bones, so like whale vertebrae from the spine, made out of glass. And they're about this big, extremely heavy, and we suspended them from the ceiling. So that was a very tricky installation. And it was fraught with a lot of tension because we didn't want to drop any. Any wrong move that we made, I mean, those pieces were going to drop right onto a concrete floor. So that was extremely tricky, difficult, but I think you could see a little bit from the video, totally worth it. They were lit and they were glowing, these glowing bones lit above your walkway as you walk down the hallway. It gave you this real sense of magic and mystery to do with the bones. People don't notice bones so much, but once you highlight them in that way, they're really extremely beautiful.
Okay. So people, you did talk about some resources in the beginning about how to follow in this career path, and the question which kind of overlaps with this is like they're asking like, can you talk about the types of training one needs to follow this career path, like where students can get information on these training sessions or internship options?
Mm-hmm. So when I started down this path, museum studies wasn't really a thing. I think there were some small areas that did something to do with museum studies. But now it's a much bigger field. There are programs, almost every university has a program to do with informal education or museum studies or museum education. University of Victoria has a great program. UBC is starting up with some programming too, as well. And now University of Toronto has a great program. But now with things being online and digital, there are so many wonderful ways to find out these sort of different courses. You can take online courses. You can take a taste of museum studies. And several of these programs have internships as part of their programming, because that is really a key way to really get to understanding the museum world, is to actually be there and working in there. So
I think in the interest of time, this probably would be our final question. And so just as final rule, what advice do you have for students who are coming out of grad school and are interested in transitioning to the communication field?
So I would say if you're coming out of grad school, science education, science communication, I would absolutely start just by communicating some science. So I would go on social media, on Twitter, just try and write about what it is that you've been working on in your grad program. Just start there, start with what you know and try and communicate it to the public, whether it's again through social media or whether you have a short way of communication that you want to apply and maybe put that as a blog on somewhere, like the Biochemistry Museum has a blog that we love to take submissions for. So I would suggest doing something like this. Start with the science that you know, try and communicate that, and from there, move out and be part of that community. There are great organizations online that you can be a part of. Schwist is a great organization. I'm sure they have the capacity for people who want to communicate some science. If there are avenues for them to do that too. I can see Christine nodding as well. And I think the important thing is just to start doing it. It's just the only way that you're going to learn and actually improve on it is to just start. The great thing about science communication is that you don't have to have a job in it in order to start doing it. You can just start with what it is that you're doing, what it is that you know, and hopefully that will start to lead towards a job and lead towards a career path if that's what you want to do.
Those are excellent points. Thank you, Yukiko, for joining us today. I think your career journey was really nice. It was so inspiring, and I think it was really interesting to hear your thoughts on like some of the ways the science is actually becoming more approachable. So I do have two quiz announcements to make. So I'll probably just I would like to share my screen so please consider joining us for these. The first event is going to be on 6th of May, and this will be our third event in the Academia to Industry transition series. And so again, for those of you who are planning on making the transition, I think do avail this opportunity to kickstart your career in industry. And the second event we have is a virtual job fair that will be coming up on 27th of May. And again, it's an excellent opportunity to meet with employers who are hiring, improve your resume, and broaden your network, and definitely make some new connections. So I think with that, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you at our upcoming events. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Hey, that's you.
Wow, we saw the new baby.
Oh my God.
That was so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Oh, I have to get a
Oh,
shot of
yay.
this. Oh, 9 months.
9 months.
3 months
That's so
more and
cute.
1 year old. Oh my goodness. How are you?
Okay, right?